Hello everyone, I am Vaishali Mitra. Today I am going to tell you the intricacies of report writing. Let us together understand and learn about how to write a report. A report is a formal draft. A report writing skill is a formal communication skill. You might have to write a report many a times in your life, sometimes in your school, later in college, and also afterwards in your work life. You might face several situations when you might have to draft a formal report. Even before we get into the details, let us concentrate on what is a report. A report gives us formal information about an event, a situation, or a problem. To get into the definition, we must say that a report is a formal, orderly, objective, factual communication written for a definite purpose. Now let us take one word at a time. We in the definition have mentioned that a report is a formal, orderly communication. When we mention that a report is a formal communication, we already know that the situation is formal. There is either an event or a situation that you have faced, and when someone, an authority, have asked you to draft a report. When we say a report is an orderly communication, we are talking about its structure. We are talking about a definite specific structure where we have to maintain certain parts systematically. We also say that a report is a factual communication. So obviously a report is full of facts. We are giving information about an event. We are giving information about a situation through our report. So we jot down the data, the statistics, the details of that particular event, which makes it factual. And we also ended the definition by saying that a report always would have a definite purpose. There is always a reason, a formal reason for which you are required to draft a report. The report, definition wise, the report also says that it is an objective communication. Now what do we understand by the term objective? It is an approach of writing where we write an event as it happens in the reality. The report writer's own opinion or feelings are totally absent there. So whenever we draft a report, be it for a school event or for a magazine or after an excursion or maybe much later in our office life, whenever we are drafting a report, the style of report writing is always objective way of writing where we depict the details of an event just as they have happened in the reality without any feelings or opinion of the report writer. There are different types of reports that we come across. First of all, say for example, a newspaper report. Well, in your life, you might have to take up a profession of a newspaper report writer. In that case, you will write a report of an event or maybe about a situation or about a problem that has happened all over the world. The topic of these reports can be various. It can be related to the field of politics or maybe entertainment, maybe science or education or lifestyle, human relationship, it can be anything. Next, we will talk about a report which is less formal than this, and these reports are actually a description of an event. They describe an event or a function or maybe a trip in detail. These kind of reports are commonly faced in your educational life, maybe from school or later from your college or from any other educational institution. You might be asked to draft a report after a college event, after a function, after a cultural program, or maybe you have gone for an excursion trip, you come back and draft a report. Another kind of report that you face is writing the reports of experiments or different processes. These are again formal drafting, and there are several definite parts and stages that you have to follow when you write these reports. Later, when you join your profession, part of your professional life, you will face several number of situations where you are drafting a report. These reports are either a survey report or an investigative report, where you survey a situation or you investigate a problem and jot down your findings and your recommendations for your authority. You always have an authority who asks you to these draft. You always have a superior authority to ask you to draft these reports, and based on your reports, they take decisions, and so these official reports or business reports or technical reports always help in decision making. If we concentrate on the report writing style, we will understand that a newspaper report is always written in an impersonal and objective manner. Over here, the situation that has happened about which the report is being written is more important, and the writer's own feelings or opinions would never come into the play. So, newspaper report writing style is always formal, objective and impersonal. Now, if I go to the report that is being written about events that you face in a school, which are more factual in nature, are less formal in style than the newspaper reporting. These reports are more in detail in comparison to the newspaper report again. Newspaper report, the fact, brevity is very important. But if you come down to these reports which you draft to talk about the details of an event that has happened in your college, you make it more detailed as per the venue, the time or maybe the sequence of events. These reports are mostly written in more than one paragraphs. Now coming to another kind of report where we are writing a report about a scientific experiments. Over there again the style is impersonal, because the person who has done the experiment is not so important, but we write in detail the procedures through which the experiment has taken place. These reports have various steps to maintain. Now let us talk about reports that we draft in our professional life, the reports that deal with certain situations or problems that we face in our professional world. These reports again are very formal and they are written in different specific parts. You investigate, then you draft the procedure of your investigation. After that, you draft the findings that you have found out based on those procedure, and in the end you talk about your recommendation based on those findings. So, business reports also would maintain a style which is formal, objective, yet orderly and maintained in different parts. When we draft a report, the language of report writing is very important. We have to be very sure about the language we use when we are drafting our report. A report writing language is always has to be very clear, concise, compact and conversational. You don't have to really be a Shakespeare to write English over here, but day-to-day conversational common language day-to-day conversational common English language is used in report writing. At the same time, you have to be very clear about the fact that correctness is also necessary. Coming to the jargons or the technical terms, it depends. If your report is going to be circulated inside the organization, say for example, you draft a report on behalf of your office for internal circulation, you can use jargons and technical terms related to the field of your business, because all the office people are going to understand that. On the contrary, if you are drafting a newspaper report, you cannot write a jargon or a technical language. Doesn't matter about which field you are writing that report, because a newspaper is for common mass. Anyone and everyone is going to read that report. So you will have to avoid that technical language over here. This is what we call is adaptation. A person who is drafting the report will have to be aware of the fact that who are going to be the readers and what is the situation or the purpose for which he or she is drafting the report, and accordingly he has to suit his language. This adaptation style will always make you a winner as a report writer. Now let us discuss about the language of newspaper report. We already have established when we discussed the style of report writing that it is an impersonal and objective style that you would have to maintain. When you are drafting the verb in the headings of that news, you either can use simple present tense or you can use a past participle or maybe an infinitive to draft that heading. Say for example, if I say the President of India leaves for SAARC meeting. Leaves over here is the simple present tense that I am using in the heading. I can also draft the heading of a news by saying that all the forts in Delhi given a facelift. Given a facelift, given is the past participle that I am using in that heading. I can also draft the heading of a news by saying that the book by Sri Y.K. Reddy to be released. To be released, the infinitive that I am using. So you can understand in either way a heading of a news can be drafted. When you are drafting a news, if the person is very important, you use active voice. On the contrary, if the person is not so important, yet the action that has happened is important and you would like to highlight that, you would draft the whole report in passive voice. Shall I give you an example to explain this? When you say the Prime Minister meets the UNO delegates, it is active voice and the Prime Minister over here is important. So you are using active voice. You can also draft the meeting was arranged in the Parliament Annex. See over here you have used passive voice, because the person who has conducted the meeting is not so important, but the fact that a meeting was arranged is important. So you understand there is no one fixed rule. Again, as I said, adaptation. As per the situation, you have to be intelligent enough to draft your report. Newspaper reports also often use the statements or opinions of famous established people. For this, you can use either the direct speech or the reported speech as and when required. Now, if I go back to the report writing for experiments and processes, the language would always have to be in passive voice. Because over here, as we already have discussed, the person is not so important, but the action is, that is the process that is taking place or the experiment that is going on is very important. So you draft the whole report in a passive voice. For example, we would have to say that 5 milliliter of hydrochloric acid was kept in that test tube, or we can even say the fish pieces were marinated in an onion garlic paste. So see, I am using passive voice because the fact that I have done it is not so important, but what I have done is important. So the action is to be given importance, and the usage of passive voice in this kind of report writing is very necessary. other than the newspaper reports, all other reports follow a fixed format. Say for example, a business report. The first stage involves meetings, data collection, investigations, different kinds of surveys, etc. In the second stage, the writer has to arrange all that he has gathered, all the information that he has gathered in a fixed format. In the second stage, the report writer gathers all this information that he has collected in a fixed format. First, he writes a title page. In the title page, he writes the subject of the report, that is, why has he drafted the report, in one phrase, which becomes the title of the report. And he adds up the report, by whom it is being written, also the name of the person who has authorized him to write the report. All this information goes in the title page. In the second stage, he also writes a letter of transmittal. Pay attention, it is called a letter of transmittal. It is a small cover letter which is added with the main report. Through this letter, the report writer conveys the information or sends the report from him to the receiver, who is the authority or who is supposed to receive the report. Next, there is the content page. In the content page, it is the list of all the parts and subparts of his report along with page numbers. And then comes the executive summary. The executive summary is nothing other than the summary of the whole report. But one has to remember that the executive summary should stand on its own. That is, all the important key points of the whole report should exist in the executive summary as well. And then comes the actual report, which is again divided into introduction, main body and conclusion. In the introduction, the report writer introduces the topic, talks about the scope limitation of his investigation, also writes a little bit about the procedure of his report writing. In the main body are all his findings. Whatever he has found out, along with proof and analysis, he is going to draft in that part. The main body of the report can be one paragraph, can be even more than that. In the end, the conclusion, and the conclusion is actually the report writer's recommendations based on which the authority can take decisions. An appendix is a list of all the information that the report writer wants to provide extra. In case he has used some newspaper article as a proof, he can add that in that appendix. And in the end of the report comes the bibliography. Bibliography again is the list of references. All the references of the books, the magazine, the journals or even websites that he has referred while drafting the report. Reports of scientific experiments and processes also list their findings under certain specific headings. Number one is aim. They have to write down the objective for which they are doing the experimentation or the process. Next comes the list of apparatus. Whatever apparatus they have used in the experimentation, that too has to be mentioned in the report. After that, it is the procedure. In the procedure, a detailed description of all the processes or the steps that has taken place has to be noted down. Along with this, the principle of the experimentation is also added, and in the end, it is the observation and the conclusion. First comes the observations, that is based on the procedure of the experimentation. Whatever the report writer has observed, he has to note that. And The whole experimentation must have given some conclusion to the report writer that is noted down as the end of the report. So, we already know that when we want to draft a report, we cannot really take it easy because it's a formal communication, and we have already learned that we have to take care of the style, the language, as well as the correctness of grammar, sentence formation, and certain specific parts or headings while drafting a report. This tells you that report is a formal communication skill. Let me tell you, it is like the difference between running and competing in a race. Do you understand the difference? Running is an ability we all have, don't we? If we have certain body parts, we know how to run. But is it just the same as taking part in a race? The moment we want to take part in a race, which is a competition, we have to be more practiced. The skill of running that we naturally have, we have to refine that, and along with that refinement, we also have to find out the factors which might slow us down. And once we find out those factors, we have to eliminate that. Only then our running becomes a practiced skill. Isn't it so? The same thing happens when we talk about report writing as a communication skill. Communication skill is something very natural to all of us. We communicate since the time we have come to this world. But when we are drafting a report, we time and again have said that it is a formal communication. So we have to practice, learn the appropriate language that is to be used over here, and we have to eliminate the factors which might make us a failure. Only then a report writer becomes successful in all his efforts.